In this video, we're going to look at the top 10 tips that every new Dungeon Master should know. Hey, Lucard here. I have been a Dungeon Master since high school, and I create weekly videos with information and resources to help Dungeon Masters run awesome games. So, if you're looking to level up your D&D game, roll a crit on that subscribe button down below, and also click that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos come out. Alright, D&D tips. Here's the thing. I wanted to do a video on Dungeons & Dragons tips for new DMs, but I didn't want to just draw on my own knowledge. I mean, I have lots of stuff floating around in my brain, but I don't know everything. So I went over to Reddit and I started some threads in the D&D Next and the RPG subreddits, asking them what the best advice they had for new DMs was. Now, the response was absolutely amazing, thanks Reddit, and after compiling all of the responses, I came up with 65 items in a spreadsheet. Needless to say, we will not be doing 65 items in this video. That's why the title said Part 1. I plan on doing a series of videos using this information that the contributors over on Reddit contributed to me. So from this list of 65 items, I tried to curate what I thought were the top 10 items. However, it was really hard to narrow it down and pick a top 10. So what I'd like you to do is, after listening to the top 10, if you think there is one piece of advice that is more important, please let me know down in the comments. Probably what I'm going to end up doing too is taking some of these items and creating an entire video focused on just one item, because some of them have enough depth that they really deserve their own videos. So if there is a topic that I briefly touch on today that you think deserves its own video, please let me know down in the comments. Alright, enough of this intro blah blah. Let's rock and roll. Number one tip for new DMs. Have fun. Your number one objective as a Dungeon Master is for all of the players, including yourself, to have a great time. If you or somebody else isn't having an awesome time playing your game, then there should be a conversation to try to find out why that's happening and what can be done to resolve it. Now, being a Dungeon Master can be a lot of work, which is why it is important not to ignore your own stake in this pool of fun that's to be had. Because the thing is, if you as the Dungeon Master are not also having fun, you're going to start questioning yourself and wondering why you're even DMing to begin with. Number 2, Dungeons & Dragons is not DM versus player. It's not a competitive game. Avoid getting into the mindset where it's you versus the players and you're trying to beat them. You as the Dungeon Master are not the enemy of the players. You're only role-playing the enemies of the players' characters. And when your players are celebrating about how they stomped the enemies and totally destroyed them, that is not them mocking you. That's them enjoying your game. You should be proud, not insulted, to hear them brag. Killing the PCs is not your objective. Your challenge is to create situations that are nearly but not completely insurmountable, and then watching the heroes rise to the occasion and overcome those challenges. But that's not to say that all encounters should be super hard. An easy encounter on occasion is very fun for the players because it shows them how powerful they've become. By the way, I did an entire video on DM versus player, and I will put a link to it down in the description or up in the card or somewhere. Number 3. Have a session 0. Before you begin your game, get together with your players and have a discussion about what kind of game they want to play. Is it a cooperative game or a player versus player game? Are they playing heroes in an epic game, or are they just kind of wandering around doing random tomfoolery? Super hard mode or super easy mode? Non-stop combat or 5 hours of peaceful negotiations? So here's the thing, you as the Dungeon Master get to decide what kind of game you're ultimately going to run, but if you decide to run a game that none of your players want to play, it's quite possible you'll end up with no players. So listen to all of your players, take an audit of what they want to play, and then design your game around something that gives each of your players a little bit of what they're looking for. Because the chances are good that not all of your players will want the same thing. Just make sure that the game you decide to run is a game that you want to run, because otherwise we're going to be back to tip number 1, which is the DM having fun. And if you're running a game that you don't really want to run, you're probably going to start questioning why you're even DMing. Number 4. Learn the rules. Your players will look to you as an authority on the rules, so learn them. Now, there are way too many rules for you to know them all, but you should have the main rules down and then know where to look in the books to find the other ones. Now, I'm going to be honest here. There are some DMs that are going to claim things like they are storytellers and they're not rules lawyers, and it's not their responsibility to know the rules. If you're going to run the game, then you should know the rules of the game. Number 5, and I'm about to sort of contradict what I said in number 4, don't get hung up on the rules. You can't know all of the rules, and sometimes under pressure, you just won't be able to find a rule. In situations like this, don't let the game grind to a halt because you're trying to find a rule that might not even exist. Make a quick ruling about what you think is best. Tell your players that you're going to roll with that for now, and that after the game, you're going to look into it in more detail and get back with them about how you'll actually handle things going forward. But you gotta keep the game moving. There is nothing fun about spending 10 or 15 minutes trying to find a rule and figure out how something works. That sort of brings us back to point number 1 about having fun. Number 6, talk to your players and then listen to them. Now, this seems extremely simple on the surface, but I really think that there are probably a lot of DMs who just don't do it. I think a lot of times we can blame issues on problem players or toxicity in the group, but when we actually get to the meat of the matter, there is a lack of communication going on. As a dungeon master, make your wishes known to your players. If you don't want to run the sort of game where the PCs run around murdering all of the other NPCs in town, tell your players that that is not the type of game you really want to run. Do not make the classic mistake of deciding that the best thing to do to solve your problems is to murder the PCs in cold blood. No, instead of that, talk to your players and then listen to them. Really listen to what they have to say. Have an open conversation with your players. Have a dialogue with them as you try to solve these things that might be going on. I think you'll be surprised at how things can be resolved quite easily when people actually talk to one another instead of just murdering each other. Number 7, the best way to become a better DM is by DMing. You can read all of the blogs, listen to all of the podcasts, and watch all of the videos, even my videos, but that won't help you become anywhere close to being a better DM the way being at the table with your players will. Now, I'm not saying don't learn from others. Definitely use all of the resources available because they will help you become better. However, at some point, especially if you've never DM'd before, you just need to take a step of faith and do it, trusting that with practice and time and experience, you'll become better. Remember that nobody, almost nobody, is awesome at DMing their first time doing it, or their first time doing anything for that matter. If you accept that going into it, then that should help relieve some of the pressure. Number 8, learn the power of yes and. When a player asks a question that contradicts the picture that you had in your mind, resist the urge to say no, and consider saying yes instead. For instance, let's say that your players are trapped in a cavern and there is no way out, except for maybe a hole in the ceiling. And one of your players asks you, well, are there any stalactites? And let's say that in your adventure you don't have any stalactites written in. Well, why don't just, instead of saying no, tell him, yeah, there are stalactites. And that gives your player an opportunity to say, okay, what I'd like to do is kind of jump off the walls, try to grab a stalactite, and see if I can climb my way out. Now, it might not have been your idea, but the plot moves forward, and your player feels supremely clever. Number 9, remember yes and's twin cousin, yes but. When your player wants to attempt something that you as the Dungeon Master consider to be nearly impossible, again, resist the urge to say no. Instead, ask the player how he would go about doing that thing. A lot of times your players will surprise you with ways that might actually accomplish that thing that you thought was impossible. Or, if there isn't anything he can think of, he'll talk himself out of it. And if he talks himself out of it, you didn't have to tell him no. Instead, you let him arrive at that conclusion himself. And if he does think of a way to do something that isn't completely far-fetched, then you can allow him to do it with a yes, but. Yes, you can try to pick the lock with a little splinter of wood, but it's going to be a lot harder than using proper thieves' tools. Number 10, sometimes it's okay to say no. Now, saying no gets a lot of bad press, but it is a tool that the DM should be prepared to use when appropriate. Some folks will tell you that a DM should never tell the players no. I respectfully disagree. Try to say yes whenever you can, but don't be afraid to say no when you need to. For instance, if your players are attempting to do something that you know will break the game, then a no will probably be better for everybody in the long run. Or if a player can't explain to you how he would go about doing something, especially if he just wants to roll dice to try to determine it, then a no might be the best answer. And here's the thing, once you've built up enough trust with your players, then they'll know that when you tell them no, it's probably for a good reason. Remember that in addition to making all of these videos, I also publish adventures over on DriveThruRPG. If you're looking for a way to help support the channel, or you just want to say thank you for all of the videos, then buying a couple adventures is a great way to do that. Not only will you be tossing me a couple bucks, but you'll also get a D&D adventure out of it. Down in the description, there is a link to my publisher page over on DriveThruRPG. As always, if you have any questions about dungeon mastering or have a problem with one of your games, please let me know down in the comments. I'm always happy to help. And until next time, let's play D&D.